Today, we're going to be talking about how can I evaluate and simplify numerical expressions. Today's learning target is today I will practice order of operations and evaluate expressions by completing lesson 1.1.1, how can I evaluate and simplify numerical expressions. So one of the things that we first want to talk about before we start getting into algebra is precisely the order of operations. So in order for us to pretty much have a set of rules to understand that we don't get different answers, we have to follow what we call the order of operations. All right, so pretty much order of operations, most of you guys already know it as PEMDAS, right? Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, right? Or PEMDAS, right? In order for us to pretty much do this, the P stands for parentheses, and then exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and then at the end, subtraction. So, in order for us to start solving or simplifying a problem, we start by solving operations inside the parentheses. And then after we simplify exponents. After that, we continue from left to right and we do multiply or divide. And again, whichever comes first, left to right. And then our final step is always to check to see if we have anything else to add or subtract. And again, whichever comes first from left to right. So that's pretty much the order that we follow. First, we check for parentheses, and then we check for exponents, and then we check to see if we have to multiply or divide anything. And then at the end, we either add or subtract. All right. And then the last four pretty much multiply or divide or subtract. Remember, it's always left to right. So we call that PEMDAS. All right. So again, usually we start off with the first two. So the PE, right? Parentheses or exponents and or exponents. And then usually the symbols that we use, you will see either parentheses, right? Or square brackets, or anything that kind of resembles that is pretty much what we check for first to see if we have anything of that manner. And then the next step would be to see if we have any exponents. So that would be like 3 to the second power. So the exponent, remembers a number right there on top. Or it could be like an x to the third power. Again, the exponent would be the number on top right there. Once we finish those two, we move on to our next step, which is multiplying or dividing. So multiplying or dividing. And then the different symbols that we use for that are pretty much, you guys have been in elementary school, you guys use the X. Just remember that the cross for multiplication, we kind of stop using it now once we start getting into algebra, and we use dots, right? Sometimes you guys will see parentheses, right? And there's like a number in front that's still meaning multiplication between those two. And then also division. So division, you guys will see it like we have this symbol, right? Or just pretty much if you guys see a fraction, that's just straight up a division. It's nothing simpler than that, right? And then our next one would be our addition or subtraction. So addition or subtraction. And then again, you guys have seen the symbols for this. These are pretty much the straightforward ones. It's just either plus or a minus. And that's it. So when we simplify our expressions, right? So let's work out a couple of examples here. So the first one is going to be, we want to check for, again, parentheses, and then we're going to check for exponents, and then we're going to check for multiplication or division from left to right, and then addition and subtraction from left to right. So first step here is that I want to check for parentheses. And if you guys notice right here, there's a parentheses and I have an operation in there. So that's always the first thing that I want to do. If you guys see parentheses, check the inside of it and then work out PEMDAS again. So 6 minus, I'm going to write everything else exactly the same. 7 minus 8 divided by, and then in there, 6 minus 4 becomes 2. And then that's still squared. And then times 3 plus 1. So now my next step is to see if if I have any exponents. All right, so the next step, again, I'm going to write everything that doesn't have an exponent. I'm going to write it exactly the same way. 7 minus 8 divided by. And then here we have an exponent now, which is 2 quantity squared. So 2 times 2 becomes 4. Remember that the exponent doesn't mean I multiply 2 times 2, but it means that I'm multiplying the number in there twice. All right. So be careful. And then times 3 plus 1. All right. So my next step would be, again, I want to make sure that I check for anything that I'm multiplying or dividing right here. So multiply or divide would be, in this case, I have this part, 8 divided by 4, and then times 3. This one comes first before the multiplication. So I got to make sure that I always check for that order. So 7 minus 8 divided by 4 becomes 2, and then times 3 plus 1. All right, so that's the 8 divided by 4 right there. And then my following step, I'm getting closer and closer to simplifying this problem to a single number, would be pretty much to multiply whatever comes next between these two. So 7 minus 2 times 3 is 6, and then plus 1. So there's nothing left for me to either multiply or divide. So now I want to start simplifying again from left to right. So my last step, I want to check for anything that's adding or subtracting. In this case, I have the minus 6 first before the plus 1. So I'm going to subtract these two. 7 minus 6 is 1. And then we're going to add plus 1. And that's pretty much just 2. So that becomes my simplified answer. So on the next example, I want to do the same thing. So I'm going to write out my PEMDAS. So P parentheses, exponents, multiplication or division, and then addition or subtraction. So first step, check for parentheses. I see there's already parentheses right there. So everything else gets written exactly the same. So 5 plus 3 minus 2, parentheses. We do the operation that's in there, which in this case it's 9 minus 1 is positive 8. And then everything else stays the same again. Divided by 2 squared plus 7. Our next step is to check for exponents. And if you guys notice, there's an exponent right there again. So everything else stays the same again. 5 plus 3 minus 2 parentheses 8 divided by 2 times 2 would be positive 4. Right? 2 squared is positive 4 plus 7. All right, so that becomes my new number. Let me put it in red so you guys can see it again. So that's what I simplify, right? So remember, that means 2 squared is 2 times 2. And then my following step would be I want to check for anything that's multiplying or dividing. And in this case is just negative 2 times 8, negative 2 times 8. So everything else stays the same. 5 plus 3 And then negative 2 times 8 becomes negative 16, and then divided by 4 plus 7. All right, so that's again the number that changed right here. Multiplied it out. Now, I already did multiplication because it came first, right? 2 times 8 came first. Now I want to make sure that I do the division, which would be 16 divided by 4. So again, everything else stays the same. I don't want to simplify anything until I do step by step. So 5 plus 3 and then minus 16 divided by 4 becomes 4 and then plus 7. So there's nothing else left that I need to multiply or divide. So the following step would be to look for anything that had to add or subtract again from left to right. So I noticed that there's 5 plus 3. If I add those two together, I get 8, and then minus 4 plus 7. So again, subtraction comes before addition here, so I want to do that one first again. So that would be 8 minus 4 becomes 4, and then plus 7. My final answer is just positive 11. So again, we do order of operations so that we pretty much have the same answer at the end, right? Because if we do something different, if somebody decided to add or subtract it in a wrong order, then everybody's going to have a different answer. So that's why it's very important for us to follow this order of operations.